So it's been over a year since the Jewish people left Mitzrayim and got the Torah at Mount Sinai. And now they went from the southern peninsula of the Sinai Desert up to Ritma, which is right at the southern border of the land of Israel. It could be in the actual modern day state of Israel already, but they were ready to just go in and fulfill their destiny and go into the land. But some of them said, hey, Moshe, before we go into the land, we got to spy it out. And so Moshe said, okay, let's figure this out. And asked Hashem. And Hashem said, Shelach lecha, if you want, you could do it. It's up to you. So Moshe decides, okay, he's going to send out spies. And these spies go in and they search the land top and bottom. And they come back with less than glorious reports about the land. They first bring some nice fruit and say, hey, it's some good stuff over there. But there are giants. It's a land that consumes its inhabitants. There's no way we could make it out alive. And the people start crying and turning and saying, no, we can't do this. We gotta head back into the desert. No way can we go. There were two of the spies, Kalev ben Yefu and Yeshua ben Nun, who tried to calm them down and say, no, we could do it. If Hashem desires, we can make it happen. But they didn't listen to them. And that's what led to the 40-year trek and detour in the desert. So I want to go through a few points in this week's Parsha Shelach, and analyze what the heck is going on over here. It starts off, Shelach lecha, send for you, Anoshim, where Hashem tells Moshe, here, every other time, I'm giving you explicit command. You should do this, you should not do that. When it comes to the spies, I'm not telling you what to do. You got to figure it out for yourself. This should have been the first red flag. Moshe thinking, everything else, Hashem tells me exactly what to do, and here he's leaving it up to me. Maybe there's not the best results to be found over here, and yet he sends 12 spies. And these 12 spies were the leaders and the tops of each and every one of the tribes. So where did they go wrong? Well, let's see. When they came back, they gave a report that they have strong cities and they have giants, which is what they were sent to do, to spy out the land to determine the viability and see, are they strong, are they not? And so what was their error by coming back and reporting what they saw? So the first thing that we notice is that when Moshe sent them to spy out the land, he didn't ask them to give their opinion as to whether or not we could do it. He said, I want you to go there and figure out how, or what's the best way to go into the land of Eretz Yisrael, not whether or not we could do it. And so their mistake was not necessarily that they saw that it was a big challenge and it was going to be a huge hurdle to overcome, but it was coming to that conclusion that I can't do it. What's the reason why we can go and say we can do this? Well, imagine you have a human dispatcher, somebody who's saying, hey, I want you to go out. If they have any sense, they're not going to ask you to do something that they know you're not capable of doing. Now, it's possible for a human to err in his judgment and send you on a mission that you're really not capable of doing. But when it comes to Hashem, if he tells us, go into the land of Eretz Yisrael, then that means that we do have the ability to do it. And so the first lesson we learn from the spies is, rather than asking, can we do it? When Hashem gives us a mission, he tells us, here, there's a lot of Torah mitzvahs. We can feel like, oh my gosh, it's an insurmountable burden. How can I possibly do them all? If Hashem gave us those instructions, he gives us this mission, then he gives us the powers or capabilities to make that happen. But to get a little bit deeper, why is it that the spies didn't want to go into Eretz Yisrael? We have to analyze, what does Eretz Yisrael mean? Of course, we got the location geographically, but there's a spiritual concept of going into the land of Eretz Yisrael that, if we understand where they were holding personally and what going into Eretz Yisrael meant, we can get a deeper appreciation for why it is that they were afraid to go in. While they were in the desert, they had all of their physical and spiritual needs taken care of. There was bread, lechem min hashemayim, that would come down from heaven called the manna. And they would go out every day and it would be delicious, whatever they wanted it to taste like. And this was holy bread. It was bread from heaven. They wouldn't say, Hamoitzi lechem min haaretz. They would say the blessing, Hamoitzi lechem min hashemayim, who gives bread from the heavens. And that bread spiritualized them and energized them, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally and spiritually. It invigorated them. They were somebody who were able to receive the Torah, and they spent their time sitting with their teacher Moshe, who taught them everything that they had experienced at Mount Sinai, internalizing it, asking questions and understanding more and more. They were learning Torah from Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest prophet of all times. And they had the well in the merit of Miriam. Miriam was a very holy and special woman, and in her merit there was this miraculous well that would travel with them wherever they went in the desert. And this well they were able to drink, and this special water, they were able to purify themselves in this water, and it was another boost to spiritual living. And throughout their journey, they had clouds of glory surrounding them on all sides. It didn't just protect them from shade, it also cleared and flattened the land in front of them. If there were snakes or scorpions or other vile things in the desert, it just paved the way. It made it smooth sailing. They had fresh laundered clothing on them at all times due to these Anani HaKavod, the clouds of glory. So imagine you're sitting in the spa, and you have all the luxuries, and not just the physical luxuries, but the deep mystical classes and spiritual understanding. And now we're set. Okay, I want you to leave this environment and go out and go live in some other place. This is essentially what the spies felt like they were being told. Leave the desert, leave the clouds of glory, and having Moshe Rabbeinu teaching us the only thing that we have to worry about is learning Torah and our spiritual pursuits, and go where? Into the land of Israel, where we're going to have to work for our daily bread, we're going to have to plow, we're going to have to plant, we're going to have to deal with our neighbors, we're going to have to fight, we're going to have to do political relations with our neighboring countries and quarrels within ourselves. We'd be much better off just staying in the desert and living spiritual lives. And that's why they went and tried to figure out how we could say, nah, I don't think that we could go in. As a matter of fact, one of their excuses was it's an eretz oicheles yoshvehi. It's a land that consumes its inhabitants. They felt like if we were to go into the land of Eretz Yisrael, we would be eaten alive by earthiness. We'd become so materialistic that it would enslave us. It would trap us. Dealing with material concerns all day is not only going to stop us from having so much time to study Torah and our spiritual pursuits, but even the little bit of time that we do have, we're going to be so sunken in the dirt that we're not going to be able to focus even for a moment to learn Torah. And it's not like their fears were unfounded. We see in the writings of the prophets that when they actually did go into the land, it wasn't all holy and smooth sailing, but a lot of failures and fallings of Jewish people, and especially now in exile and going throughout the land, we have many troubles and failings that living in a spiritual oasis, we wouldn't have those problems to begin with. So then, if their claim was so holy and so pure, they didn't want to go in because they wanted to remain spiritually attached to God, why were they reprimanded? Why were they punished? What was wrong with this theory? We have to understand what going into the land of Eretz Yisrael really is. Going in and entering into the land is, yes, a grounding of sorts, leaving the spiritual oasis. But when God created the world, he could have technically stopped in one of the spiritual dimensions. They were holy, pure, and you have myriads of angels singing praises to God all day long. And if that's what God wanted, pure angels in absolute serenity, he could have just stopped creating at that. But the fact that God continued creating and brought it all the way down to this materialistic world is because the ultimate desire and goal of God is to have a relationship, a home in the material or the lowest realm of creation. And so going into the land and then cultivating it and building the temple out of stone, permanence in the land of Eretz Yisrael, is this idea of taking the spiritual dimension that they had in the desert and then grounding it into the material world, because the ultimate goal of our connection and spiritual pursuit is to take that spirituality and materialize it, bring it in and transform the physical world. Now, you can't do that if you're not in the physical world. And so the spies made a mistake because they wanted to remain in the clouds. Literally, they wanted to remain in the Anani Akomi, the clouds of glory. But the ultimate goal is not fulfilled by remaining in the clouds. And so Kalev said, don't worry about it. Ki lachmeinu heim. When in response to saying that we are going to get consumed by the land, he said, no, they're going to be our bread, that we are going to be involved in physicality, but rather than it consuming us, we're going to go in with that divine strength and power, and we're going to consume it, that we can remain attached to that spiritual drive and holiness, even as we have our hands and feet down in the dirt and dealing with the actual world. And so we learn from the spies a very critical lesson in our divine service. We all have times where we're focused on spiritual growth and personal health, and those are essential for any person's well-being. But we can't get so caught up in those moments that we forget about what we are meant to do with that growth. We're meant to take that spiritual growth and pursuit and then use that to help another and reach out, rather than becoming a recluse and staying in the ivory tower of spirituality, to then take what it is that you've learned and you've connected to and share that with somebody else, inspire and uplift another. And when we do that, we are entering Eretz Yisrael. And the more we enter into our personal Eretz Yisrael, the more we refine and bring out the Eretz Yisrael of the world. We reveal how the entire world is essentially God's home and God's garden, which brings more loving kindness and peace for all of humanity, until we'll have the third Beis HaMikdash rebuilt in Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh, B'meira v'yameinu, Amen. Have the third Beis HaMikdash rebuilt in Jerusalem, physically and literally, through each and every one of us taking the lesson from the spies to heart and doing all that we can, knowing God is the one sending us, and therefore we have the ability, and we don't have to think about if we can do it, but find a creative way to make it happen. And if you put your mind and your heart to it, I am confident that you'll succeed beyond your wildest dreams and be able to bring so much love and goodness and kindness to the world who needs it so badly right now. L'chaim, and a good Shabbos.